Welcome to Better Relationships, Better Work, where we explore how to make work better through the power of relationships. My name is Jason Lauritsen. I am an author, speaker, leadership trainer, and I am on a mission to fix how we treat people at work. Now, this is the final episode of this season, and it is a good one. I'm joined today by my longtime friend and mentor, Cy Wakeman. In our conversation, Cy shares stories about both a great friendship and a great boss relationship. And she shares that the key to a great relationship is the ability to love each other up and call each other up. And she has some really great stories about what that looks like and how to do that. We also talk about the key to being more resilient, and we unpack why we should all be more willing to be more vulnerable and vocalize our appreciation and our bids for connection with others. This conversation is rich with wisdom. Cy Wakeman is a drama researcher, New York Times bestselling author, and recipient of the #1 Global Leadership Guru Award for 3 years running. Deemed the secret weapon to restoring sanity to the workplace and the world place, Cy Wakeman works with organizations globally to ditch the drama, hardwire accountability in their teams, and turn excuses into results. She has published 4 best-selling books. The latest is titled Life's Messy, Live Happy. Things Don't Have to Be Perfect for You to Be Content. I think we all need that book. Cy also shares her latest leadership insights on the Reality-Based Leadership podcast. So if you want more Cy Wakeman after this conversation, you will have no problem finding it. Now, I'll be back soon with a new season of episodes, but for now, please settle in and enjoy my conversation with Cy Wakeman. Cy, thank you for joining me.
Jason, pleasure. It's been too long since we've had another great convo.
Well, I feel like, we're having conversation about relationships. Like I was tallying it up in my head today that I'm like, I think it's been like close to like 20 years almost. I think 19 years since you and I first connected. And that doesn't even seem possible, but I do have a 16-year-old now. So that probably, and I think you were in the car when I found out that that we were pregnant with her. So
yes, I got to be part of that amazing moment.
It's been a ride, right? We've been through a lot since then. So
we have been through some great times.
Let's get into it. So before we get into the conversation today, where we're going to dive into a couple of your relationships to try to learn some things from them, I want to ask you a few questions to get to know you a little bit and how you think about relationships. And so, I'm going to start with a softball question. I'll start with the easiest, I think, of the 3. People tell me this, and that is, what quality does Cy Wakeman value most in a friend?
I would say reciprocity, and not just in a transactional way. Like if I bring you a casserole on 4th of July, you better repay me on my birthday. It's not at all that. It's reciprocity in that we both are in a place in our lives that we have some great things to give to one another. And we're both really receptive and willing to play our part in that gift giving that will ultimately just enrich and nourish both of our lives. So it's reciprocal.
Mm. Sounds like maybe a little balance in there too.
Balance, yeah. Balance. It doesn't have to be similar what we give each other, but there's been times where I haven't been able to kind of figure out my main grievance in a relationship or a friendship. And it usually comes down to reciprocity. I don't want to be the one always giving advice or the one, always helping to regulate. I want somebody I can trust to do that for me. Like I want us to be at the same level of vulnerability and willingness to kind of take our armor off, as Brene talks about.
It's funny that you say that. It reminds me of, in an earlier episode, Jamie Griffin was talking about the analogy that he used was when you're in it's kind of like you think of like two, sort of, I don't know, poles leaning against each other. And if they're leaning against each other in equal balance, then they stay up together, right? And they're both equally supporting one another. But then he talked about relationships at times start to tip one way or the other, where now one side of it is carrying much more of the weight. There's more burden, there's more weight, it's out of balance. And he was just describing it that's how he knows when it's time to leave a relationship. Whatever that relationship looks like is when it gets that out of balance. So it reminded me of that when you said that.
And I give people some grace in that, because depending on their life situation, it doesn't have to like tally up every month or every year, but over the long run. For me, it's more about not leaving a relationship out of balance. It's a big indicator of what to do with my boundaries, because I believe boundaries are kind of the user manual to me. Here's how to be in relationship with me. Here are my preferences, my desires, my limits, my non-negotiables. But when I am interacting with someone in a relationship that I feel a lot of resentment about, I probably have them too close in to the inner circle. And it's like a bullseye target. I have these levels. And if I place you out at like level 3, which is we're kind to each other in our neighborhood, I need to put you in a place where I can love you and me at the same time.
Yeah.
And if I'm feeling that resentment, it's not about the person taking advantage of me. It's about me not having put them in the proper place in my life.
Well, and it is like even the analogy still almost kind of holds, right? Is it like, well, if I feel like you're tilting into me and it's putting this pressure, I need to take several steps back to kind of balance things out again, right? It still sort of works, I guess. I love the analogy.
Like it.
So
I like it.
Jamie Griffin, thank you for that. All right. So I say this every time, I think, because it is true. This is my favorite of the questions is, what is something you learned about relationships growing up or as a child that still shapes how you think about or show up in relationships today?
So one of the things that I learned very early on from my mother's example as a child is she had a tribe of women. She just had this group of amazing women. And I talk about this heartfelt story in my book, Life's Messy, Live Happy. She loved the song Amazing Grace. And I thought she loved that song because it was my first recital song that I played on the piano. And she even kept the sheet music. I thought it had something to do with me. And as she was passing, she asked me to sing that song at her funeral. And I said, Mom, we've kind of learned it's a really bad song. Like, it's not culturally appropriate. It was like a slave ship song. Like, why do you love that song? And she goes, oh, I thought you knew if you surround yourself with enough amazing women, your life will be graced. And that title was just so important to her, and both staying humble. But I remember thinking growing up, I don't feel mothered. My mom had 7 kids. She worked full time. And I just didn't get enough of her. And what I learned is this tribe of women she had mothered me. I was always mothered. I was never not mothered. And it was because of these lifelong relationships that she maintained successfully. So what I learned as a kid is, I guess, just the value of, for me, female relationships. And I've really kept that up because I've made a lot of, interesting choices in my life. And it's always been the women that held me up, protected me, gave me courage, did for me that I could not do for myself, witnessed my miracles. And I think too many of us, our friends don't get to see our miracles because we never let them see when we were in pain or when we were hurting. So long answer, but I think that really shapes me. I saw how much my mom treasured her female relationships above anything.
What I suspect part of that is too, because there's such, it sounds like, there's such like safety and support and encouragement, and like the world is hard, life is hard. And I'm sure like having that kind of support is really, really transformative when you can find it and nourish it.
Well, and Mr. Rogers always said, look for the helpers. And my mom would admit it. She's like, I'm not home all the time, but you have any one of these women to call, and any one of them will drop anything for one of my kids. And I think we all have this imposter syndrome, and we wonder how we're going to get it all done. And we know we're not being perfect, in my case, moms, that our biggest safety blanket is having these, ride or die relationships that collectively we are genius, and collectively we can do hard things. And so I just knew from an early age, riding solo wasn't the way to go. Being stoic and proud and not asking for help, just not the way to go. And you and I did research stuff in accountability, that resiliency and the willingness to ask for help early and often really was more powerful than grit, just the willingness to reach out. And I'm glad that she wasn't proud to say, I have to do that, and I'm not a good mom if I don't do that. She's like, all the numbers to all the women, use them. And I've done that throughout my life. I have this team of women that are just so important to me. They're just my ride and die.
That's awesome. It's awesome that you have that. And it takes real intention, I think, to build those relationships, right? To build that tribe you've got to be committed to it. And you've got to show up for them too. So that's awesome. Last get to know you question here is, what is the best general relationship advice that you've ever heard?
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that question. Best general relationship. I just think that everyone is a mirror to you. Everybody's put in your life for a reason, and be grateful for the teachers, no matter how things end up, and be a good student. Learn what people have brought to you. I think it's too easy to look at how other people fail me, instead of how can I be evolved by this experience, and what's the gift and what's the grace from that experience, I guess would be, I don't know if that's succinct relationship advice, but the gist of it.
I feel like I want a t-shirt that says everyone is a mirror to you. Like that's a keeper right there. That's pretty powerful stuff. So thank you for that. And I might show up in a t-shirt in that someday. You never know. I love my t-shirts.
That. I love your t-shirts.
You never know. All right. So let's get into the relationship, sort of the mining of relationship for some insights here. And I asked you to think about a personal relationship and a work relationship. And so let's start with the personal relationship. And this is one that is strong and healthy in your life. And who are we going to talk about?
I would like to talk about Kathy Frost. She's now passed, but she is still very much an icon or an image. And I've had someone kind of be her successor in my life named Linda Lenz. So I've had these Kathy Frost-like icons in my life. So Kathy kind of wraps it up for me as far as an incredible personal relationship.
She's the OG.
She's the OG. I love that. She would love that.
Well, so tell me a little bit about the relationship. Who was she? What was the nature of your relationship with her?
So I had just relocated to Sioux City, and I was really lonely. And I've always been kind of attracted to these elder, wise females. And Gladys was my next door neighbor. And I'm just like, I just don't have anybody in this town. And how will I know? And she's like, you'll know. Like, you're going to meet somebody and you'll find their name written on your heart and you'll recognize them. And so just keep your eyes open. Lo and behold, a week or so later, Kathy was managing a psychiatric clinic that I had responsibility for as a hospital administrator. And she called me down because she was being underserved by the hospital. And it was kind of a come to Jesus meeting. And as I was talking to her and she's giving me really hard feedback, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like her. Like, I recognize this is the one whose name is written on my heart. So she's talking to a hospital administrator. I'm gleeful that I found her, like a scavenger hunt, gleeful. She's not getting my symbols at all. Like, I'm giving really weird nonverbals. And I'm like, oh, we got this. That's the least of the work we'll do together. Like, and as we're walking out, I just blurted out to her, I'm like, we're going to be great friends. And she was just like, You are one of the weirdest people I know. But we had this work to do together, and we just found out that it was almost like instant recognition. We could love each other up, but we could call each other up. And she really was someone who was doing her own work and helped me be a better person. And so we met at work and we became best friends. We were best friends for probably over 30 years and went through every single thing together in my adult life. So she was just such a great companion.
That is awesome. I love that we're going to be great friends. It's like,
Yeah, I just blurted
we're
it
going to
out.
get married someday. You don't know it yet.
One time she gave me a card that it said something on it like, "You're the weirdest person I know." And that's how I knew I'd really like you or something. And I think that is a lesson for me because a lot of times I was told, I'm just too much. And when I intuitively see something I want to vulnerably like commend or compliment, like to not do that. And some of my best relationships have been through being willing to blurt out, "I like you. I think you're pretty cool. I think we've got some cool things to do together." Because I think it takes somebody breaking the ice like that to really get deeper in a friendship. And at the time, I had a lot of companions, but no partners. And when I was looking for Kathy Frost, I was looking for a partner, not a companion. And I was getting all these women who wanted to lunch and do things and network. But I had no partners that really were willing to go through life with me. And she really became a partner.
So I'm curious, when you talk about like you could love each other up and you could call each other up, I'm curious if you can share a little bit about what does that look like? What is the tension that, can you remember any like particular stories or moments that sort of symbolize what that looks like in this kind of a relationship?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, like, the loving me up, I just really felt from Kathy that I was enough. I was so clear that I was enough and I was just loved well. She loved me in a way that I just was convinced that in her eyes I was enough. And as I would go through some hard things, I would have people tell me, like, "Oh, you're so courageous." I'm like, "I'm actually pretty scared, fearful person." And I'm like, "Gosh, where do I get this courage?" And I was so well loved by Kathy that I could go out in the world and be really brave. And she came to my aid so many times. I was, 20 some hours in labor with a baby that was shoulder dystoshed and the labor was going disastrous. And I was just giving up. And she walked into that room and she was just, the calling up. She wasn't kind. And she was like, "You are a mother." I always start crying. She's like, "And you are going to dig down to the bottom of your toes and we are going to have this baby." And I was like, "I am dying and my hip is broken. You're basically like, F you." And she is just like, "That is not your role here. Your role is to save your baby's life." Like, she just knew when to like really call it up. And I was able to reciprocate that to her because as she died of breast cancer, and as she was dying, she was really going through this dance. And she talked a lot about, in fact, we were separated during COVID, and she would leave her iPad on FaceTime, and I would leave mine on. And whenever she'd wake up, we would talk. And even if it was just for 10 minutes, because her drugs made her really sleepy. And one day she really got into this regret thing. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, I just want one more moment." And we didn't have enough time. And I just wanted to do this. And we didn't do the bucket list. And I was able to call her up and say, "No, we had enough. We had, enough good times. We had enough bad times. Like, we were enough to each other." We did that back and forth. It was almost like there was one time I was so devastated about a marriage breaking up that I remember laying in bed with her saying, "I can't breathe. I'm so tired. I can't even breathe anymore." And she was like, "No problem. Just put your hand on my chest and I will breathe for both of us." Like, it was just this, she would take the reins, but if I complained about how somebody treated me, she would be like, "You're the one that stays." So I think a
Mm.
better question is not why did they do that to me, but why do I stay for this? Like we both had psych backgrounds. We didn't counsel each other, but we certainly helped people think clearly and see reality clearly. We didn't enable each other and really just said, if you want something different, I'll help you do something different.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that. Some awesome or some great insights in there.
She
Let's
said to me,
let's
just a final note, she's like, Cy, Wakeman. We always called each other by first and last names. She would say, and my mom, she got this from my mom when my mom was passing. She supported us. She's like, you are perfect. And you could stand a little improvement. And that was like, she would say that to me, like get right in my face. And I would just crack up and we would giggle like schoolgirls. And that's my standard for friendship. And right as Kathy was passing and I was stranded in Cabo, lo and behold, Kathy said, "Oh, don't worry, I'll replace myself. I have successors out on the planet." And so I was looking again for a friend, and Linda showed up, and the similarities are radical. So she absolutely replaced herself upon her death in my life.
This webcast is sponsored by my longtime friends at Inspiring Workplaces. Now, if you are someone who's working to create an engaging and inspiring workplace for your employees, and of course you are, that's why you're here, then listen up. Inspiring Workplaces is a global community of tens of thousands of HR and employee experience professionals that you can join for free. As a member, you will gain access to thousands of articles and videos and podcasts and events that will help you change the world by changing the world of work. They are also home to the Inspiring Workplaces Awards that recognize the best workplaces in the world. You can learn about the application process at their website. So please go visit inspiring-workplaces.com to learn more and to join the community. That's inspiring-workplaces.com. I think we could keep talking about Kathy. It sounds like probably for quite a while. There's a lot to learn in there, but let's put a pin in that
Absolutely.
because I asked you to think let's go to the other one because I'm dying to hear who the other one is so that we can dive into that one as well. So I asked you to think about more of a work relationship, a positive relationship kind of born through your work. So we can dig into that a little bit. So who are we going to talk about there?
I had so many people I could talk about, you including one of those. I want to talk about Mary Dolan, Mary Captain Dolan.
All right. So tell me about Mary. Who was Mary and what was the nature of your relationship?
So when I was a therapist, Mary was our director of the Behavioral Health Center. And then our careers, like she would get promoted and I was one of the ones she would like sponsor and bring along behind her. So I worked for her in a number of capacities, probably over 15 years. She also was very strong in the recovery program and very strong in just being a great female leader.
So as you reflected on your relationship with her, having some time to look back, which is always the best way to do reflection. What was it about the relationship as you think about it now that had the biggest impact on you? What was it about it that has really stuck with you?
Her refusal for me not to reach my potential. Like she saw greatness in me. And I don't want to say she was like hard on me, like, that abusive thing, like, "Oh, you're tough now because I was so hard on you." She didn't do it in those kind of traumatic ways. But once she role modeled by her daily presence, what it was like to be an intentional, thoughtful, conscious leader. I saw her make amends when she screwed up. I saw her connect with people and ask for them to be better. But she coached me so hard and then sponsored me so big. So she wanted to make sure that what she advertised me as, I would deliver on because it was her reputation on the line. But there were just key moments where she taught me so much of what I teach today about your circumstances aren't the reasons you can't succeed. I would go in with a bunch of excuses and she'd be like, that's a perfect description of reality. I'm just wondering why you haven't delivered. And it's like, but I'll never forget the one time we really bonded was I was out working with like 19 clinics, like 54 physicians. She'd really sponsored me up after she had told me, she's like, go get your hospital administration degree. We pay for it. Go get it. I'm like, I have no interest in that. And she said, I didn't ask if you wanted to go get your degree. I told you you needed to go get your degree and that we would pay for it. And I said, well, I have a 1-year-old. I don't think I really want this. And she goes, trust me, I've raised a child. It'll be the best weekend of your life that you'll have a reason to be at college. It will give you a break. It will get your brain working again. It will get you excited about life again. My prescription for you is you're a little burned out. Go back to school. So I was managing these physicians and we had just negotiated their pay and a regulation changed with physicians could no longer get payment from labs they prescribed as a big federal change. So I had to go back out and renegotiate all of their contracts. And I had started to collude with the physicians. And I was representing the physicians. I would come back and I'd be like, I don't think it's fair. And if you really heard the physician side, and she was a woman of few words. She called me up. We still got paychecks with like pay stubs, like the paper was. She goes, Sai, I'd like to see you in my office in 30 minutes. Bring one of your pay stubs. Because, we all had them like in our top desk drawer. She goes, bring one of your pay stubs. And I walked in and I'm like, hey, Mary. She's like, hey, Sai, did you bring your pay stub? I said, yep. She goes, read to me the top line, like the payer on the pay stub. Just read out loud to me the top line, who pays your paycheck. And I'm like, Marion Health Center. And she goes, good. I'm glad we're clear on that. Help me understand how if we pay your paycheck, you're out working on behalf of the physicians as their personal lobbyist. And I was like, she goes, no, really, help me understand. Help me understand. You are underserving them and you're under-delivering for me. And she said, you have gotten yourself in the wrong role. Your job is not to appease those physicians. Your job is to deliver up ready, willing, able, and joyful physicians who understand that regulations changed and that we renegotiate. And I was just like, oh my God, I was kind of scared of her. And she knew when to put a 2x4 to my head. And she's like, you got 20 days to deliver those guys up. And they mostly, unfortunately, were guys at the time because we didn't have a lot of diversity. But she also knew other times where I was in a finance position for my own development. I was floundering. I was failing. I was losing credibility at the senior level. They're like, I thought you said she's a star. This woman is horrible in finance. She was kind enough to not come down hard on me. She goes, I think we have you in a bad situation that's hurting your reputation. You are not great with financial acumen. I thought we could develop it. I think we need to change strategy and just compensate and get you a good financial analyst. And I'm going to rescue you out of that role. And so you're going to have a new role coming your way and you're going to be delighted and you're going to say yes to it. It's not a promotion. It's the only way I can get you out of there. But trust me, it's saving your butt. So I felt like we were Avengers together. Like she would call me up when I needed to, and she would save my butt when I needed to. And she had this beautiful discernment.
Mm. Reminds me a little bit of another Mary that we both know that played that similar role for me many years ago too. So very similar.
Yes, just like that, just like that. And I was such a racehorse. I would get too far out. She'd bring me back in, always kept me fed and protected, and just, was amazing. She was keenly interested in having a ton of people that she played a part in their career. And when we got together, kind of that second generation, and every one of us had a Mary Dolan story about how heavily impacted we were in our careers. And it really set the course for me to make sure I'm doing that for others.
So let's see if we can pull, as you think about, it sounds like you've pulled a bunch of stuff out of this relationship that you have taught others or you've used in other relationships, but is there something in particular, just in the context of the kind of relationship that you had with her and what, sort of how positive and impactful that was there something like a lead lesson or a lead insight that you took from her that you've carried forward into, your relationships with others or how you have shown up in your relationships with others?
Yes. It's like she worked a program. She made sure I knew and was convinced that she cared about me. And she worked that level. That was the foundation that I try and work for other people. She was keenly interested in my success. She cared about how my life turned out and how my career turned out. And she proved that I could trust her, because I think a lot of times we just tell people the positive and we don't tell them the negative. But I could trust her completely because I knew she would call me on the carpet and she would sponsor me in a room I wasn't present in. She would sing my praises and school me hard. And so I learned from her that if I want others to really work hard for me and really develop their full potential, I need to let them be convinced I care about them and let them know that they can trust me to do the hard stuff, to do the full relationship. And also that she cared about excellence. It wasn't just about me, it was about excellence, that it made a difference to her that we're all committed to excellence for the people we served. And it wasn't committed to excellence for our own ego. And so I think what I pull out from her is these boxes I need to check. And there are three boxes I think everyone checks about us. And I think Lou Holtz had a similar model. But when I interact with people, have I showed them I care about them? And have I proven to them that they can trust me? And if I called them to greatness and shown them that I also am committed to excellence, and that in that way I can really impact their lives.
Right. So let's now pull on some threads here and see if we can pull some things out. We've already been talking about, I mean, ironically, both these relationships were either born from work or were work relationships, so that we've already got some application there. But I'm wondering if you could talk about this idea of, and I think you could see it with Mary too, but Kathy is where you called it out, this that you really valued in this relationship. You could love each other up, you could call each other up, sort of there was those two pieces. And I'm wondering if you could talk about, what does that look like? How do you teach people or equip leaders to do that in a way in the modern workplace? I'm curious kind of what, I guess, for some tactics or advice maybe that you could share, because I know you probably have many, but like what are a few that we can put out there that might be helpful?
I think a really core value I have and try and teach even to do for others is both of those leaders. The loving me up part was they were really willing to validate my experience. That seems super hard. That seems frustrating. You seem devastated. I see you, and hold space. Even if this was self-induced, I hold space that, this is a big lesson for you this lifetime. This is the shadow side of all the beautiful things you bring. They held space for my experience, but they weren't willing to validate the sense I was making of my experience. And it was a beautiful separation. So I see you're struggling. What that person did to you was really horrific. And I can only imagine what that feels like in the betrayal. Like, they really were willing to hold space, but they weren't willing to validate my sense of it. Like, I'm the victim and, like, I had nothing to do with this. And they weren't willing to do that. What they wanted to do is say, when you're ready and you can breathe again, I'll partner with you in reflection and not tell you what I think, not give you advice, just help you have a safe place to come to self-reflect and admit the truth to yourself in the presence of others. Like, they were so great at non-judgmentally being there for me when I whispered, I think I abandoned myself before that person ever abandoned me. And then they're like, that's it. They're like, sit with your grief until it tells you its name. They just were good miracle watchers, sitter by. And I think that is such a great technique to validate that I'm suffering, but not validate the sense I was making of it, which was that I was an innocent victim. They were really willing to partner in inquiry.
I just know from my own experience that I have great intentions to do that with people, personally and professionally, but I also know that I fail at it about probably 70% of the time because it's difficult. It's difficult to be in that space and recognize that that's what's needed and not jump to, well, let's sort this out. Let's try to fix this. Let's get into it right now when that's not what you need. So I'm curious if you're working with a manager or a leader who has someone in front of them who needs you to hold space for them, how do you know, or how do you help them with the discernment of the moments when it's time to hold space and be in non-judgment, and the moments when you do need to step in and take action or do something for that person? Because I know that can feel kind of tenuous, and I think most of us race to I race to action. That's my bias. So it's really hard to hold space sometimes. So I'm just curious if there are any techniques or tips or insights you could offer maybe to help a well-intentioned leader with how to discern the appropriate response in that moment.
I love Michael Bungay Stanger's work of stay curious 1 minute longer.
Mm.
And so when I do my best work, I recognize that action, which seems passive, like holding space or waiting 1 second longer or asking, tell me more about that, that as long as somebody's willing and turning inward and there's some curiosity in the room and there's compassion in the room, there's no need to really come down hard on anybody or call them up. Like there's no need to interrupt their thinking, and that's really active work, not passive work. And so what I try and teach for leaders, this is when working with people who are self-disclosing, vulnerable, they're mid to high accountables. These aren't for your folks that, are your performance issues. Practice staying curious 1 minute longer. And he wrote the book, The Advice Monster and The Coaching Habit, just great, great stuff. If you don't have those books, you have to, those are two beautiful books, easy to read. And so the discernment comes when somebody clicks out of self-reflection and I want to jump into action. I need to jump into questions to get them back in self-reflection. And if the self-reflection moment's over, then I reinforce, I care about you. I think you're doing good work, and let's keep thinking and maybe give an assignment for self-reflection. Like we got into a cool topic. You're having me reflect a lot on relationships and friendships. And, I want to think more about that. And then as a leader to say, you know what, let's think more about that. And let's have another moment where we thought partner on that. Unless it's something that needs to be fixed immediately, like me delivering up the physicians. If it's immediate fix, I've spent all this time in your evolution holding space, that I get a few free cards to say, by the way, we're not doing self-reflection today. You need to go and get this done. I think you get permission then, if only you do it 20% of the time, imperfectly. Like you said, 70% of the time, you probably don't do that. I don't think you need to do it 100% of the time. I think when the moment opens up and we don't close it prematurely and we let the moments naturally happen as they happen, I think one of those moments is worth 10 years of goodwill. And I know you and I have had those moments where it's been like a random, we're just going to go out and have a drink and have fun. And all of a sudden a conversation comes up and it's like, it goes right to the heart. And then, that's our 10-year work. And that's why we, are going on our 20-year anniversary, which is crazy.
So one other thing, I'd be remiss if we don't talk about this, because I think it's something that is increasingly difficult to do in the work world, or in the world today generally, but particularly at work, was you talked about how, like, when you met Kathy, and then you sort of talked about how you had learned to do this or you have done this, is that you will sort of verbalize an intention, or you will sort of call out a desire to be sort of a very direct bid for connection.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that is really, like, I am shocked by, I think, how rarely that happens. One of the practices I've talked about at different times is, like, I realized a number of years ago that I didn't have the kind of relationships with male friends that I needed and craved in my life. And so one of the things I did is I just started each year picking one person and then saying, hey, I really would like to have a deeper relationship with you. Like, you're important to me. And I'd like to commit some time with you to do that if you would be interested in doing that. So far, everyone has said yes. Nobody has said no yet, which is good. I'm sure at some point somebody will be like, I'm busy this year, but so far so good. But like that, but I don't think I've ever had anyone do that to me. As long as, I mean, like, my wife tells me after the fact that she knew she was going to marry me the day we met, but that was not part of the conversation that we had. So I'm wondering, what does that look like today? What do you think? I mean, I'm just wondering if we can give people maybe permission or a nudge or some help in, like, what we can do, how we can show up in the world, and particularly at work, to maybe make those bids for connection in a way that feel constructive, helpful, positive. Because I think we're desperately craving more of that. And most of the people I talk to, I think, are starving for connection, particularly at work. What does that look like, do you think?
I think it looks like getting out of your head and into your heart. We are so polarized now, and it's not even vulnerable to give somebody critique or to, find our differences. And I think it takes some vulnerability to, from your heart, give appreciation and acknowledgement to the beautiful things you see in other people. And I know I erred at a part of my career where I was like pretty into accountability and giving feedback. And when COVID hit, people were like using my work for evil. And I'm like, whoa, 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 wait a minute. Like, this is all based on like people knowing that you really love and care about them. And so as I've aged too, I just have gotten a lot better at giving people grace and not pointing out the three things they need to improve on, but the amazing things that I see them doing, whether it's not even a long-term connection, but a bid for connection even in the moment. The Gottmans, who study marriage and what makes a successful relationship, they say, one, make a bid for connection, and then they tell the other partner, no matter how imperfect it is, like, respond even to an imperfect bid for connection. And
Mm.
as I'm out there dating again as an introvert, like, I don't know how to tell if somebody like likes you. It's so nice when somebody goes, and by the way, I like you. Like, I like spending time with you. And I think we just leave people a little insecure about the fact that we think they're pretty cool or they've helped us, or people are like, you probably hear this all the time, but Sai, your work has really, helped. I never tire of hearing that because it comes from an individual, but I have to think about how often I haven't told other people that they helped me. Like, I'm on stage a lot. I get, all these accolades. But, just like Kathy Frost, like, loved me in a way that knew I was enough, I had to ask myself, have I loved others in a way that they knew for certain that they are enough, whether that is, in this moment or in any, random moment. And so I just think we have to get intentional. How do we do this? We get intentional and stop leaving the unspoken be the nourishment that other people are craving so much. Why do we withhold that?
Yeah, say it. Say it
Say
out
it.
loud.
Just
Say
say
it
it
out
out.
loud, because it's like sunshine for
Yes.
people. And it just saying thank you, or hey, that, I see you, right? I think a lot of it is so much. I don't remember. I don't think you use this phrase, but I have come to really embrace it. It's really bearing witness to another human being, right? Letting them know that they are seen. And that is probably the best gift that you can give. And I think a lot of people feel unseen right now, and that's fueling a lot of how we feel and a lot of the separation. So
And we're
let's try
wired
to give
towards
that gift.
the negative. We're wired towards the negative. When I used to teach a junior high class, I don't know if it was part of junior achievement. I can't remember what the class was. I would come in for one day in a class, and I would walk in and I would say, everybody take out a piece of paper and write down 10 things that you right away don't like about me. And junior high, they're like, I don't, she shouldn't wear those tights with that skirt. Like, why does she have those dumb glasses on? Like, their pens flew. And then I would say, well, write down 10 things that you already like about me. And they're like, but we don't even know you yet. And it just showed them how, especially in junior high, we're so quick to not like somebody, but you have to know that's the work of the ego. That's protecting you.
Yep.
Is like, I'm going to already not like you. It's so vulnerable to say, I really like how you handle that. Or I tend to always feel comfortable around you and would like to get to know you more. That's so much more vulnerable because we're saying, I'm open to dropping our armor and getting to know one another. And I think it's a hard thing to do. And I think we just don't do it enough.
That feels like a perfect place to wrap. So I thank you so much. You are a gift. I deeply appreciate our friendship going on 20 years. And I'm looking forward to seeing where the journey goes from here. But thank you so much for sharing. This is a lot of really, really great stuff today. So I appreciate you.
I cherish our friendship. It's been a blast, and I can only think it's going to get even more interesting and better.
Indeed. We'll see you soon. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. More importantly, I hope you learned something from the episode that can help you right away. Now, if you'd like to reflect on what you can learn from your own healthy, positive relationships to make work better, I've included a link in the description below where you can access and download what I call the relationship reflection exercise. This includes the same questions that I ask each of my guests to reflect on prior to our conversation on the webcast. Also, if you found today's episode valuable, I'd ask 3 quick favors of you. Number 1, please like the episode. By liking the video and adding a comment if something spoke to you or stood out to you as really significant, you give me some great and valuable feedback, but you also help others find the video. I'd also ask you to subscribe to the channel. That does 2 important things. 1, it makes sure that you won't miss any upcoming episodes, and it sends me the message that you like the kind of content that I'm creating here. And finally, please share this video with someone who you think might benefit. What better gift can you give someone than the gift of better relationships and a better work experience? I'm really grateful that you were here today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.